He woke up from a coma in the future. Asuma was reborn as the trashiest student in the Magic Academy. In the past, this man was a monster, but out of envy, he was betrayed. Now, in the future, he was just another student being bullied. But one day, when a bully stepped forward, Asuma took a step back. With magic, he slammed the bully to the ground. The students were left in shock, and in a world where magic reigns supreme, Asuma became a true genius at the academy. A giant creature attacks the magic city in the kingdom of Grand Gaia. Telling her son to run, a mother watches him only cry for help. Looking at the sky, the two notice the creature approaching. Then its master orders the other races to perish. Firing an attack, the creature launches it toward them. Wrapping her son in her arms, the mother tries to shield him from the impact. A man appears before them and blocks the attack. Perplexed, the enemy tries to understand what happened. Recognizing their savior, the mother whispers that it's the Archmage, Lord Asuma. Then the hooded being questions who he is. Hitting the opponent with a punch, Asuma silences him. Soon after, Asuma moves through the crowd. Tossing creatures into the air, he hurls them toward a portal. A little later, he realizes he's surrounded by several enemies. Preparing a spell in his hand, Asuma stays focused. Casting a black hole at his adversaries, he declares it's all over. Sucked into the portal, the enemies vanish. Emerging from within the portal, an intense light fills everything, and the enemies are all struck down. Approaching, a man comments that he did it. Curio, Asuma's subordinate mage, declares it was all thanks to him. Then Asuma announces that this marks the end of the Great Otherworld War, and that humanity has been saved. Thanking everyone, he bows for what they've done. Responding with a smile, his companions say they should be thanking him. But soon, everyone starts chanting his name. In the capital of the Grand Gaia Kingdom, the Magic City, a ceremony is held to celebrate the end of the Great Otherworld War. The King of Grand Gaia announces that he is banishing Asuma. Questioning the reason, Asuma reminds him that he saved the world. Confirming the deed, a counselor says he saved humanity from the monsters and the invaders who controlled them, and that even the Omega was annihilated, thanks to the large-scale magic only he could conjure, erasing the gate to the other world and becoming everyone's savior. Agreeing, a soldier states that Grand Gaia was saved by the power of a single man, and Asuma repeats his question. The king then states that this is precisely why he is so frightening. With the war over, that incredible power is no longer needed. In fact, it has become dangerous, and so he orders Asuma to disappear for the future of Grand Gaia. Realizing the absurdity of the situation, Asuma can't believe what is happening. Remembering the celebratory wine he drank earlier, he tries to understand. It was a forbidden wine that completely sealed all mana and magic. Staring at his companions, he questions them. Curio of the Flames apologizes for deceiving him and for calling for a toast. Cheyenne of the Earth comments that she never imagined someone like him could plan a rebellion. Mune of the Water adds that the Sovereign's prediction was never wrong. Isaiah of the Wind laments not wanting to see something so beautiful fall to ruin. Then the king bids him farewell and orders them to begin the chant. Activating in the hall, a spell takes form. Noticing the spell, he sees that all the mages have united their power, and that it's piercing even his magical resistance. Denying he planned a rebellion, Asuma explains he was focused only on dealing with Omega. Questioning in silence, he wonders if it could be that the king's prediction was just an excuse. Even so, he knows the king's orders are absolute, and no one dares to defy them. Wondering if this is how it all ends, his expression crumbles. Questioning the meaning of everything he did for this kingdom, he searches for an answer. Asking at least for his soul to be carried on, he lifts his head. Activating a spell on his chest, Asuma screams for his soul to be carried to the next life. Watched by the mages attacking him, his body trembles. Consumed by the magic, he begins to disappear. Shooting into the sky, his essence leaves his body, and so the Archmage was erased. The world entered an era of peace, and all this happened 3,000 years ago until time passed. Lying in a hospital bed, a young man opens his eyes, and he wonders where he is. Approaching, a doctor questions what is happening. Wondering how that patient managed to wake up, he furrows his brow. On a drawer, the patient's name is revealed as Shiobana Asuma. Realizing his name is still the same, the young man watches the doctor approach, saying it's a miracle. Reaching him, the doctor places a hand on his shoulder to get his attention. Recognizing the reincarnation spell as a success, he realizes he can understand the language. To understand this world's civilization, he asks the nurse how to get to the largest library in the region. Not understanding the question, the doctor and nurse exchange confused glances. Using an ability to influence the nurse, Asuma adjusts his posture. Responding automatically, she starts giving directions to the library and the doctor scolds her for talking too much. Thanking her, the young man then asks if those belongings are his. Confirming, the nurse nods her head. The doctor keeps asking what's wrong with her. Moving away slowly, Asuma ignores the commotion as they ask him to wait and if he's okay. Excusing himself, he simply leaves and sits at a waiting area. Opening the backpack he took from the hospital, he examines its contents. Picking up an object, he wonders what this metal slab is. Asking a woman beside him about it, he receives the answer that it's a phone. Looking at the device, he repeats the word phone. Using his magic to analyze the object, he focuses his gaze. Discovering the item's nature, Asuma realizes it's a device that grants access to an incredible archive of information. Deciding to look closer at the device, he leans in. As a train arrives at the station, he boards it. Once inside the car, he realizes he no longer needs to go to the library. By analyzing the phone, he was able to obtain basic knowledge about this world. It was a tool that didn't exist in his time, but what he knows now is that 3,000 years have passed. He also discovers that magic was in decline and learns that a new technology called science has emerged. This was the human society for which he had driven away Omega. Wondering if this is the world he sacrificed his life to protect, he sighs. Arriving in front of a house, he observes the facade. Entering the room, he concludes that this was where Shiobana Asuma lived. Looking at a picture frame, he wonders if the boy had lost his family. Finding the boy's diary on a table, Asuma opens it. Reading the pages, he discovers the young man was tired of living and that no one helped him. Finally understanding why the body's owner was in the hospital, he feels the phone vibrate. Looking at the device, Asuma finds a screen full of hateful messages. Locating a chat group called the Shibuya Mage Training Academy, he falls silent. The next morning, the young man arrives in front of a large institution. Entering the academy's courtyard, he observes the place. Approaching, two students ask if he's okay. Questioning them, Asuma asks if he shouldn't be there. Explaining the situation, the classmate says there were rumors he tried to take his own life because of the bullying he endured. Appearing among the students, a red-haired young man says he's glad to see him alive. Approaching with his group, Tenoji Kiryo appears with a smile. Recognizing the young man, the boy blinks slowly. Calling him Kiryo of the Flames, Asuma leaves the redhead confused. Staring him down, Kiryo questions his way of speaking. Reminding him that he told him not to show up at the academy again, he asks what happened, since the boy almost died because of his magic. Then Kiryo asks if he lost his memories, and questions if he wants to suffer even more. Mocking Asuma, his companions suggest taking his credits. Recalling the messages and the diary, Asuma concludes that this boy is not Kiryo of the Flames. Wondering if the young man might be a descendant, he adjusts his posture. Deciding to measure how much mana his new body possesses, he takes a deep breath. Gathering mana in his hands, Asuma concentrates the power and hits Kiryo with a powerful punch to the face. Introducing herself as Lily, a girl says that today is an important day. Professor George East announces that the aptitude test to determine everyone's magic type will be held today. Noticing Shiobana-kun seems to be having trouble understanding, a classmate offers to help. She then explains that in modern magic, aptitude is expressed through colors. Representing fire magic, the color red marks the attribute. Water magic is blue, and black magic is represented by the color black. She explains that magic works by passing mana through the body's magic circuits, and since they have limited capacity, a person usually specializes in just one attribute. Concluding that the attribute he is suited for will be his, she watches as Shiobana Asuma is called up. The professor approaches and asks what his attribute is. Without hesitation, Asuma states that he doesn't have one. Confused, the man frowns. Explaining that he lacks an attribute, he states he doesn't plan to specialize in any of them. Whispering, everyone wonders if he's really saying he has no attribute. He continues, stating that the colorless are those who don't have an attribute. Even if they aren't visible, they're still there, he comments. He declares that the internal magic in that body should be able to respond to any attribute, and takes a deep breath. The professor narrows his eyes, saying people like him don't belong at this school. Then he questions the reason for his happiness. Calling him trash, the man lets out a bitter smile. Remembering how the world has been against him, Asuma stares at the ground. The professor crosses his arms, explaining that the colorless lack attributes and the magic they can acquire is minimal, pointing out that his growth is impossible and that he doesn't even understand the school's emblem. The man shakes his head, but Asuma replies that he personally thinks the colorless are the strongest. He raises his voice, asking for a chance to prove it in a mock battle. Shocked, the students exchange glances. Yelling that this is absurd, The professor gets angry. The man then announces that the aptitude test will be changed to a mock exam with no restrictions, with himself as the opponent. Calling him a scoundrel for thinking the colorless are strong, the professor grits his teeth. Worried about the situation, the classmate notes that Professor George is the top instructor and that the fight will have no restrictions, leaving her apprehensive. Walking toward his opponent on the field, Asuma adjusts his stance. Warning that mock battles can have accidents, the professor tells him not to cry later. But Asuma just asks if he isn't the one who should be worried about that. Giving the signal to start, one of the students authorizes the battle. The man then claims he's the only one at the academy capable of handling multicolored attributes. Launching an attack that combines fire and thunder, he rushes toward the young man. Tearing through the air, the magic races toward Asuma. He stops the attack with just one hand, remaining calm. Shocked by what he sees, the professor's face goes pale. Holding the magic in his hand, Asuma asks if that's all he's got, yelling that it's impossible. The man tries to regain control, then he attacks again. Blocking the second attack just as easily, Asuma keeps his gaze steady. In despair, the professor and students ask themselves why the magic isn't working. Walking slowly toward him, Asuma doesn't slow his pace. Continuing to scream that it's impossible, the man panics. Extending his hand, Asuma moves forward, and the professor begs him not to get any closer. Trying to use his magic device to defend himself, the man hastily raises it. Asuma touches the object, his fingers grazing the metal. It instantly freezes in his hand, rendering the device useless. Then Asuma tells him to confess everything he has done until now, threatening to turn him to dust if he doesn't confess. The young man narrows his eyes. Energy forms around the professor's neck, and the air grows heavy. Finally admitting it, the man reveals that he saw Shiobana being bullied but pretended not to see, and that even after the young man consulted him, he ended up beating Shiobana instead of helping him. Watching the scene in silence, the students don't know how to react. A student suggests that someone should tell the principal what happened. Falling to his knees, the professor loses all his strength. Asuma approaches, looks down at him, and asks how it is. How does it feel to lose to a colorless like me? He finishes. Life at the academy continues as normal. Watching from a distance, two students wonder if it's really him. Commenting among themselves, other students say he seems like a different person. When class ends, he remains in his seat. The classmate approaches and calls his name, and he asks what she wants. Asuma bows his head, thanking her for teaching him earlier. Replying that it was nothing, the girl forces a shy smile. Then he says he has a favor to ask. He casually asks her to go out with him. Stunned, the girl freezes at his request. Surprised by the scene, the other students whisper about the situation. Still speechless, she tries to process the moment. Becoming embarrassed, the girl looks away. She guides him around the campus, showing him the club building and the staff building. Arriving at the rooftop, he thanks her for the tour and says he hopes it wasn't a bother. Denying it was a bother, the girl says she understood what he meant by going out. Turning slowly, she laments that she was really looking forward to it. Suddenly, she turns back to him. Flustered, the classmate denies she was looking forward to it at all. When he asks what she means, she just replies that it's nothing. Taking the lead, she guides him to the academy's magic analysis room, which students can use upon request. Looking around the place, Asuma takes a few steps. Turning to her, he thanks her for showing him around the academy. Speechless, the girl nervously clasps her hands. He smiles slightly, promising he'll definitely return the favor. The classmate remains motionless, staring silently. Asuma calls her name, Shiona, and waits for a response. Responding to the name, she blinks in surprise. He narrows his eyes, asking if she is really Shiona. She scratches the back of her neck, apologizing for saying something weird. He adjusts his hair, explaining that the atmosphere around her has changed. She reveals that she felt like she was in a coma and can't remember anything, apologizing for causing trouble. He thinks to himself that it's not time yet, and remains silent. Accepting the explanation, the girl apologizes for asking strange questions. Saying goodbye, Asuma tells her he'll see her later. He walks alone down an empty hallway. Arriving at the magic analysis room, he stops in front of the door. He uses a spell to open it, gaining entry. Accessing a terminal to start an ancient magic analysis, he touches the screen. As he operates the panel, the system displays various pieces of information. Analyzing the data, Asuma concludes that this seems possible. Combining ancient and modern magic, he concludes that should be enough. Deciding he'll register the next day, he takes a deep breath. Appearing out of nowhere, a man approaches and asks if he's Shiona. Turning around, Asuma asks who he is, since he couldn't sense his presence. Introducing himself as Isaiah from S4, the young man smiles and says it's a pleasure to meet him. Asuma raises his eyebrows, questioning what S4 is, and an explanation appears showing they are the strongest in the academy. Confirming he's one of them, Isaiah grins widely. Commenting that Asuma isn't from the elite, He asks how someone can be colorless. Finding the situation interesting, the young man touches Asuma's chest. Remembering what happened to the other student, Isaiah comments that this is the right place. Extending his hand, he asks Asuma to join them, as they are all equals there. Asuma watches him in silence, not reacting immediately. Insisting on the request, Isaiah waits for his decision. Asuma accepts, asking them to take care of him. As they shake hands, he feels a different kind of magic. He silently analyzes it, wondering what kind of magic it is and if he's being probed. Perceiving Isaiah using modern magic so casually, Asuma considers it rude. Saying goodbye, the young man waves and leaves. Commenting that he understands and finds the situation interesting, he disappears down the corridor. The next morning, activities begin at a large academy. Someone walks down the hall, approaching the staff room. Making a request at the counter, Asuma waits in silence. She confirms his request for 4 in the afternoon, informing him it will be for 3 hours. Attending a class, Asuma sits among the other students. He seems distant, staring ahead as Shiona watches him from her side. Later, Asuma enters the magic analysis room. Dismissing the advanced technology, he comments that all he needs is the right environment and time to focus. Then, he activates the large ancient magic panel. This was an ancient magic from his past life, a secret technique for those with magical aptitude. It works through a mechanism that absorbs mana from the atmosphere, compressing it inside mana receptacles in the body. Once the magic to be activated is determined, the refined mana is transferred to the execution receptacles. Standardized by a magic circle, the activation process depends on the mage's skill to finally release the magic. But ancient magic could only be used by a chosen few, as those without talent couldn't refine mana. Noticing the differences in the current era, Asuma analyzes the situation. Replaced by an organ called a magic circuit, the mana and execution receptacles no longer exist within the body, and through an invention called a smart staff, mana is injected automatically. Artificially generated magic circles activate the spell. This widespread process made magic activation possible without innate individual differences. On the other hand, this manualization reduced the magic's power and prevents its use if the staff is taken away. With that in mind, his objective becomes clear. Planning his next step, he will develop a hybrid magic that combines ancient and modern technologies. To achieve this, he first needs to master modern magic at its highest level, conquering all attributes. Preparing to move forward, the calculations for the fundamental theory of his hybrid magic hypothesis will be done by the quantum computer. Pressing a key, he states that this should solve it. Loading the basic theory calculation for the hypothetical hybrid magic, the computer begins processing. Waiting for the results, he decides to go out for a drink. Turning to leave the room, he places his hand on the doorknob. A door opens into darkness, and the environment suddenly changes. Falling upside down in an unknown place, Asuma loses the ground beneath his feet. Wondering if the whole world has turned upside down, he closes his eyes for a moment. Recognizing this as a targeted modern magic attack, he wonders where it came from. The attack went unnoticed by his detection, showing precision. Remembering when he met Isaiah and shook his hand, he frowns. Realizing it was Isaiah who acted immediately, Asuma takes a deep breath. Wondering if this is what Isaiah meant by getting along, he adjusts his thoughts, but he decides he'll need to remind him of the hierarchy from their past lives. His body hasn't been teleported, so he understands this is an illusion created by a spell that alters recognition. Typical of Isaiah to create such original magic, he thinks, and it seems some things haven't changed in 3,000 years. Continuing to fall through the sky, he wonders what will happen next. Something suddenly catches his attention. Identifying the approaching creatures as familiars artificially created by Isaiah, he narrows his eyes. A large creature with the silhouette of a bat appears before him, spreading its wings. Realizing he'll be on the defensive if this continues, he decides he needs to locate Isaiah. First, he'll try to use deceleration magic to stop his fall. Focusing on what's to come, he gathers mana. But a magic ray strikes him, revealing that any counter magic activates an interception spell. Preparing a magic circle with his hand, he ignores the pain. To protect himself, he needs to dissipate the ray before it explodes. With no time to use deceleration magic, he watches the space around him distort. The scene changes to outer space, and he begins to fall toward a planet. Unable to breathe, understanding he's in a place with no air, he closes his eyes. Watching from afar, Isaiah calmly observes the outcome. Glancing back, Asuma analyzes the situation. Large fireballs head his way, illuminating the void. Reorienting himself in midair, he realizes the attacks are endless. Conjuring a new magic circle with his hand, he prepares himself. Unleashing the spell, a large explosion destroys the projectiles. Amid the destruction, he says he got Isaiah's message, and now, It's his turn to attack. Summoning another magic circle, he prepares his counterattack. Clashing with Isaiah's attacks, his spell makes space tremble. The impact produces a massive explosion, lighting up the void. Stating that this level of mass-based attack is easy to intercept, Asuma shows no fear. Realizing the place seems to be an airless vacuum, he analyzes his surroundings. At this rate, he will eventually die from suffocation. Noting the precision of the magical space, he realizes it was built with remarkable care, almost like a work of art. It's fitting for Isaiah, who loves beautiful things, so he understands the style, and that's precisely why he knows there's a flaw. Knowing Isaiah, he concludes he would want to witness his death with his own eyes, so he must be nearby. Telling himself there must be a magic eye somewhere, Asuma decides he will find that weak point. Closing his eyes, he stops moving. Wondering if he has decided to stop resisting, Isaiah watches him from a distance, but silence means nothing. A series of massive explosions engulfs Asuma's body, taking over the space. Keeping his eyes closed amid the explosions, he waits for the right moment. Releasing the concentrated mana stored in his mana and execution receptacles, he activates his plan. Unleashing all his energy at once, he makes the space vibrate. Continuously expanding his enormous magic circle, he prepares to analyze the area. Reacting to the sudden display of power, Isaiah's eyes widen. Floating in the center of that space, Asuma observes the surrounding attacks. With his magic circle, he will analyze the space to find anomalies and locate the enemy's surveillance point. The fireballs advance toward him, lighting up the path. Focusing to finally detect the flaw, he maintains his concentration. A point of light appears in the darkness, and Isaiah reacts immediately. Opening his eyes, Asuma confirms he has found it. A magic circle forms, and he shatters the structure of the place. Pointing his hand forward, he fires a spell. The magical space begins to crumble, disintegrating around him. As the illusion completely dissolves, Asuma is left simply standing in front of the door. Confirming it was a recognition-altering spell, he slowly exhales. Looking through a window, he assesses the situation outside. He begins to levitate, rising silently. Arriving on the roof where Isaiah is, Asuma surveys the scene. Watching his approach, Isaiah doesn't react. Saying he's finally found him, Asuma lands firmly. Landing on the same roof as the other man, he approaches without haste. Asuma questions him, asking if he cast a spell. Remaining silent, Isaiah doesn't answer. Moving closer, he asks why Isaiah is trying to hurt him. Still not answering, the young man maintains a vacant stare. Asking if this was his idea of getting along, Asuma narrows his eyes. Suddenly jumping up and striking a pose, Isaiah creates an unexpected contrast. Exclaiming that Asuma is exactly as he imagined, he breaks into a smile. Staring in confusion, Asuma remains motionless. Praising how he broke his illusion magic and his non-enchantment levitation, Isaiah calls him magnificent. Continuing his praise, he says, "Using a magic circle like that is unbelievable and as beautiful as the paintings on the ceiling of the Duomo Cathedral." Moving closer, he reveals it's not over yet. Stating that his disintegration magic is fascinating, he comments that he'd like to know the logic behind his magic circuit. His expression suddenly changing, Isaiah tilts his head, revealing that what he wants to see most is the sight of something truly beautiful falling to pieces. His voice grows heavy. Finding himself trapped by bands of energy, Asuma shudders. Unable to believe he failed to sense the signs of another spell, he remembers this is typical of Isaiah. Casting his modern magic, Meteor Fall, Isaiah raises his arm. Several sharp projectiles take shape in the air. Explaining that he manipulated the wind to hurl construction materials from a building site, he points upward. The metal rebars fall toward Asuma, cutting through the air. Asuma defends himself, trying to keep up as Isaiah attacks him from all sides. His eye suddenly widens as he detects the danger too late. Something hits him head-on, breaking through his defense. His eye widens from the blow as he feels the full force of the impact. Hit squarely by the attack, he loses his breath for a moment, but he manages to summon a magic circle with his hand. Shielding himself just in time, he pushes back some of the pressure. Wondering how long he can hold on, Isaiah watches with interest. Noticing another threat from above, Asuma looks up. An electric pole plummets down from above, heading right for him. Another metal structure collapses along with it. He leaps back to avoid the impact, sidestepping the danger. The attack was planned to leave no escape route, aiming to corner him. Debris rains down from all sides, creating an enclosure. Preparing to defend against the wreckage, Asuma adjusts his hand. He expands his magic circle to protect himself, creating a barrier. Struggling to bear the weight of the impact, he grits his teeth. Watching and laughing, Isaiah enjoys the chaos. Wondering if Asuma is reaching his limit, he crosses his arms. Something in the sky catches his attention, and Isaiah lifts his chin. A plane cuts through the atmosphere, falling from the sky toward them. With open arms, Isaiah declares, "This is his world, and his magic. He sighs, claiming the meteor shower is more beautiful than any art. Gesturing with his hands, he wonders how Asuma will defend himself. Raising a hand to the sky, Asuma stays focused, urging him to appreciate the glory of his art. Isaiah's smile widens. Looking at a small object between his fingers, Asuma gauges the distance. He flicks the object into the air, launching it without hesitation. In disbelief, Isaiah loses his composure, questioning how he canceled the magic that would bring down the plane. Crashing against the ground and exploding, the object shatters the scenery. He puts the pieces together, concluding it was all a phantom illusion. With a swift motion, Asuma snatches something thin from the air, closing his fingers with precision. Reacting in shock, Isaiah asks how his hidden needle was discovered. Pointing at him with the needle in hand, Asuma states he's figured out his plan. The falling debris manipulated by wind magic was just a decoy. After dropping real objects, Isaiah created the illusion of a falling plane to draw his attention. At that moment, his true goal was to launch magic needles laced with unconsciousness spells. The grandly named Meteor Fall was nothing but a bluff. Staring at him, shocked by the revelation, the color drains from Isaiah's face. Praising the impressive work, Asuma states that it won't work on him. In despair, Isaiah yells that it's impossible he saw through his plan, as no living mage can detect his magic activation. Yelling in frustration, he claims Asuma isn't the legendary great mage from 3,000 years ago. Calmly, Asuma explains that since Isaiah is excellent at hiding magical traces, he figured his final blow would be something subtle and silent. Suddenly appearing behind Isaiah, he grabs him by the collar. Raising a finger, he declares that Isaiah's only mistake was one thing. He explains that Isaiah used too much magic in front of him, giving him the opportunity to analyze it. Placing a hand on Isaiah's chest, he activates a spell. Releasing from his hand, the magic expands. Surprised by what's happening, Isaiah's eyes widen. He tries to understand, questioning what kind of magic circle it is. Then, admiring it, he comments that it's beautiful. Preparing to cast his ancient magic, Vibration Lock, Asuma takes a deep breath. Holding Isaiah, he watches the ground around them shatter. Thrown by the force of the magic, Isaiah is flung far away. Asuma watches as Isaiah falls to the ground, defeated. Holding the needle, he addresses Isaiah. Declaring his victory, he ends the battle. The scene shifts to the capital of the Magic City Kingdom, Grangaya, where the atmosphere brightens. Focusing on a painting in the garden, Isaiah moves his brush. He continues to work on his art, ignoring the world around him. Approaching, Asuma comments that it looks like light is emitting from the canvas. The great mage watches his disciple in silence. Turning around, Isaiah asks if he has returned. Praising the painting, Asuma says it's as beautiful as ever. Isaiah sighs, replying that it's nothing and still far from perfect. Suddenly interrupting, Curio claims he was the one who defeated that Omega. He insists it was definitely his magic, trying to show off as Miyun glares at him. With a disappointed look, Isaiah fiddles with his brush. Saying his goodbyes and that he's leaving, Asuma turns his back. Calling out to him, Isaiah says he was happy to receive his praise and asks to paint his portrait next time. Curio and Miyun watch as he walks away. Curio smiles, commenting that Isaiah is as shy as ever. Miyun retorts that Curio is the one who isn't liked, crossing her arms. In the past, walking down a grand corridor, Isaiah looks at the walls. Reflecting that he doesn't get along with mages who don't appreciate art, he avoids talking to them. His precious time with the great mage interrupted, he quickens his pace. Maintaining his melancholic expression, he takes a deep breath. Seeing Shion standing nearby, he asks what's wrong. Staring at him seriously, Shion holds her ground. Explaining she was summoned by the Lord and received an imperial command, Shion surprises Isaiah. Whispering the order in his ear, she makes him freeze. Reacting with disbelief to what he just heard, he takes a step back. Isaiah shouts in disbelief that Lord Asmar is planning a rebellion. Confirming it's true, Shion states that the Lord's vision of the future is absolute. Unable to accept that Asmar could betray Grangaya and all of them, he calls the idea unthinkable. Wondering why Lord Asmar would do something so ugly, he clutches his chest. Returning to the present, Shiobana Asuma wakes up lying in a bed. Staring at the fluorescent lights on the ceiling, he blinks slowly. Waking up in the academy's infirmary, Isaiah feels a headache. Sitting up, he comments that it feels like he had a terrible nightmare. He looks up as a bottle of water is offered to him. Turning in surprise to the person beside him, he almost drops the bottle. He's speechless when he sees it's Asuma. Asuma explains it's an electrolyte drink with sugar, mentioning that Isaiah was groaning a lot. Advising him to replenish his lost fluids as soon as possible, he hands over the bottle. Isaiah frowns, questioning why he helped him. Asuma crosses his arms, replying that he took his magic head-on and couldn't have come out unscathed. But luckily, his magic circuits are working normally, so it doesn't seem to have been anything serious. Suddenly, Isaiah points his finger, changing the subject. He narrows his eyes, pointing at the towel in Asuma's hand. The towel shows signs of having been used to wipe away sweat, revealing the care he'd been given. Isaiah tries to confirm if Asuma has been taking care of him this whole time. Asuma looks away, replying that he wouldn't want to lose a skilled mage. Taking the bottle, Isaiah says, "Thank you." Asuma sighs, asking him not to think everyone in S4 is like Kiryu. Isaiah reflects that Kiryu's magical abilities are exceptional, but admits he doesn't agree with his way of thinking. Asuma relaxes his shoulders, explaining he was simply curious to see the strength of the one who defeated Kiryu. Isaiah lowers his head, apologizing on Kiryu's behalf for pressuring him and trying to get him expelled from the academy. Asuma watches as he bows, analyzing the gesture. Asuma speaks sincerely, telling Isaiah he doesn't seem like a bad person. Taking a deep breath, Asuma states he'll forget about the ambush he set. In return, he proposes a deal, leaving Isaiah surprised. Asuma reveals his plan. He wants Isaiah to leave S4, join him at the academy, and create a new faction. Questioning the idea of a new faction, Isaiah lifts his face, thinking that the Isaiah before him has no memories of 3,000 years ago. Asuma decides he wants to trust him. In the present, he's alone and needs allies to accomplish anything. Asuma extends his hand, asking Isaiah to walk by his side toward his goal. Getting off the bed, Isaiah stares at the floor. Kneeling before Asuma, he makes his choice. Accepting the proposal, Isaiah calls him Asmar-san. He has a strange memory of doing the same thing long ago. Suddenly, the school nurse appears, surprising them. Asuma comments that she's been caught. Apologizing, she explains that she didn't mean to spy. Asuma says goodbye, stating he's leaving the nurse's office. He picks up a medical chart from a table and quickly analyzes it. Handing the chart to the nurse, he explains that it's Isaiah's magic circuit diagram and she can use it as a reference. Confused by what she received, the nurse is at a loss for words. Surprised by the detailed analysis, she asks him to wait a moment. Smiling, she invites him to join her lab as a special student. Asuma refuses the offer, thanking her. He says he likes the academy and will think about it after graduation. Then he leaves. Leaving the room, he leaves Isaiah watching him go. Returning to the magic analysis room, he continues his work. Despite the minor interruption, the analysis of the new magic is complete. He checks the results on the computer. The calculation confirms his theory has established a new magic system and recommends he present it at a conference. Realizing his idea was correct, and that the fundamental theory for modern hybrid magic is complete, Asuma takes a deep breath. Next, he will organize the magic formulas according to their objectives, adapting them to the magic circuit. Since precise verification was necessary, he was continuously aided by the new pathway, and he will show everyone by inventing basic magic. The next day, classes resume at the academy. Standing before his students in the classroom, Professor George East organizes his materials. He reads from his book while Asuma takes notes, keeping pace with the class. Speaking with George, a teacher comments that the student improved suddenly and might be cheating. Stating he can't take his eyes off him, another teacher continues to watch. Believing there's no way he could cheat during the oral exams, George dismisses the suspicion. Writing a formula on the board, he asks if anyone can decipher that modern magic. Pointing directly at the incompetent student, Shiobana Asuma, he issues his challenge. The professor narrows his eyes, questioning if he's going to say he can't solve it. Answering that he can, Asuma stands up from his desk. At the board, he begins to explain the skill formula that solves the magic circuit's application. Writing out the complete solution, he leaves the other students and Professor George completely shocked. Based on 800-year-old calculation principles, the theory makes extremely complex calculations possible. Recognizing the reference, the students understand that the professor's device, known as a ray machine, is now called a smart wand. Furthermore, an environment where advanced magic is possible has been established. Pointing to the professor's belt, Asuma comments that he also has one of those devices. Attached to the professor's belt, the smart wand glows faintly, admitting that, once again, the answer is correct. Professor George sighs. Dismissing him, he tells Asuma to return to his seat. The other students, stunned, watch him without a word. Sitting down, Asuma reminds himself that he needs to re-register for the magic analysis room. Later, during the lunch break, the cafeteria is full of students. A group of students approaches Shiona, begging for her help. They reveal they want to get on good terms with Asuma and try to convince her. Embarrassed by their insistent request, Shiona lowers her gaze. But seeing Asuma arrive, the students pressure her even more. Giving in, she says she's just asking. Turning in her chair, Shiona calls out to Shiobana. She invites him to go to the Ebisu Magic Cafe with everyone after class, trying to sound natural. She quickly adds that it's okay if he's busy, feeling nervous. Placing a hand on his chin, he seems to ponder the invitation. The students watch expectantly, holding their breath. Then, he cracks a slight smile. Asuma accepts, saying that's fine with him, and asking to join them. Celebrating his positive response, the students throw their arms in the air. Watching the group through a window, someone observes from a distance. It was Miyune, who identifies him while holding a flower. Remembering bumping into him and seeing his face, she tightens her grip on the stem. Crushing the flower in her hand, she keeps her eyes fixed on him. Sitting in a tree, she declares that she's going to mess everything up for him. The scene comes to life in front of a cafe called Ebisu Magic Cafe Minutes. Inside, Asuma is surrounded by classmates bombarding him with all sorts of questions. Smiling calmly amidst the barrage of curiosity, he remains in control. Trying to bring order to the chaos, Ruri asks them to form a line. Holding a cup, Asuma replies that cheeseburgers are delicious, and that a certain rumor is just a misunderstanding. Sitting down at the table, the group begins to chat more calmly. One of the girls insists, asking which student he's closest to. Turning, Asuma answers that the student he's closest to is Ruri. Celebrating the answer with great enthusiasm, his classmates erupt in joy. Refusing to believe it, Ruri crushes her drink cup with force. Using a towel to clean her hand, she tries to maintain her composure. Apologizing that she got burned because of him, Asuma lowers his tone, but Ruri replies that it was her own fault. In the background, other students comment that their class isn't an elite course. Adding that Asuma is a NEET, a classmate surprises Ruri, who hears he's already earned a nickname. A classmate tries to justify it, explaining that NEET stands for someone who isn't in education, employment, or training. But the others correct him, stating that in Shio's case, the nickname means he's skillful and wonderful. Asuma agrees with the new definition, surprising Ruri that he accepted it. Leaving the cafe, the group talks excitedly. Discreetly, one of the boys trips the other. The classmate hesitates, asking if he's sure, and Asuma simply replies that it's fine. Bringing his phone close to one of the girl's devices, he makes the connection. The girls cheer, excited that they're now connected with Shiochi. Watching the group walk away, someone observes from a distance. Speaking on the phone, Isaiah reports that they've just left the cafe. Noticing something, Asuma's gaze shifts and he becomes more alert. Turning with a smile, Ruri thanks him for the time they spent together. He quickly interrupts her, gesturing for silence. His expression changes completely, startling the girl. Suddenly surrounded by a large group of students, he asks what they want. Watching the scene seriously, two of the students in the group remain motionless. A luxury car approaches at high speed and stops abruptly. The students form a corridor, clearing a path. Then a young man steps out of the vehicle. Recognizing him immediately, Asuma's classmates comment that he's a member of the S4. The newcomer approaches and asks if he's Asuma. Introducing himself as Fukada Sakane, he declares that he is the president of the Academy's club federation. Analyzing his presence, Asuma maintains a firm gaze. Noticing that Siwan is also there, he makes a mental note. Fukada observes him, commenting that he seems to have become a bit dependent. Staring at him in silence, Asuma doesn't react. Stating that he can't keep depending on him and that he trusts the S4, Fukada shifts his weight. Therefore, he challenges him to a magic duel. Completely shocked by the declaration, the girls hold their breath. Watching the scene from afar with a faint smile, another student takes it all in. Repeating the word duel to himself, Asuma tests the sound of it. Astonished that he doesn't know what a duel is, Ruri's eyes widen, but Asuma just stares back at her. Whispering in his ear, she quickly explains the magic duel. Fukada steps closer and asks if he will accept the challenge. Declaring that he can't allow someone to act as they please to bring happiness to the academy, he clenches his jaw. His hand tightens on the hilt of his sword as he takes his stance. Drawing his weapon, Fukada releases a strong pressure that rushes toward Asuma. Immediately realizing this is no magic duel, Asuma heightens his senses. The intent to kill takes shape, manifesting as a crushing pressure from Fukada. But Asuma notices the pressure isn't just directed at him. Engulfed by the force, his classmates are also affected. Asuma questions his methods, realizing Fukada is using the others as hostages to prevent him from refusing the duel. In a memory, he sees Siwan training intensely, while Asuma watches from above. A subtle smile appears on Asuma's face as he takes a deep breath. Saying it's fine and that he accepts the duel, he stands his ground. Replying that he's grateful, Fukada relaxes his shoulders. Sheathing his sword, he makes the pressure around everyone disappear. Turning, he announces that the duel will begin tomorrow at 8 in the morning in the Academy's central arena. Walking away toward his car, Fukada disappears from Asuma's sight. Stating that it's still too early to be challenged, Asuma smiles. Telling Sawon to get ready, he ends the conversation. That night, Asuma sleeps peacefully in his room. Resting in his bed, he breathes slowly. Suddenly, his eyes open, and he wonders where he is. Seeing himself in his original form, he realizes he's in a dream. Realizing it's a lucid dream, he closes his hand in the air. Remembering a recent class on how dreams allow one to dive into the subconscious, he connects the dots. Faced with this, he gets an idea and decides to put it into practice. Deciding he'll investigate the original owner of this body, he furrows his brow. When he reincarnated, a small amount of mana remained in the body's magic circuits. Explaining that he hasn't touched it, Asuma says that through this mana, he can read the former owner's thoughts. The young man's thoughts must still be there, but to access them, he needs to use magic to extract his spirit. Since no ancient magic for this exists, he decides he'll create one now. Beginning to weave a new spell, Asuma combines formulas of mental manipulation and hypnotic suggestion to create an activation circle. Smiling as he realizes he's creating a new spell, he concludes he'll probably be the only one in history to achieve such a feat. Launching his new magic, he's surprised by the process. A portal opens, and the spirit of the original Shiobana is pulled out. Materializing completely before him, the young man's spiritual form floats. A tear runs down Asuma's face as silence falls. Asking where he is, the spirit looks confused. Smiling, Asuma announces that the rescue was a success. Continuing, he says a meteor shower was passing nearby, with everything being sucked into a black hole. But inside, something caught his attention. Standing out in the darkness, a point of light struggled to remain. Extending his hand toward the light that seemed to be fighting to survive, he feels the weight of the decision. He thought that if the light hated being pulled in so much, he would take its place. Staring at him, surprised by the revelation, Asuma is speechless. Explaining that he kept falling, and that he was just someone who wanted to die but lived, the young man looks away. Saying that Asuma, on the other hand, wanted to live but ended up dying, he exhales. Laughing, the boy claims that he was the one who should have kept the body. Disagreeing firmly, Asuma frowns. Looking at him, confused, the young man waits for an answer, explaining that they are now two souls sharing one body, and that neither of them can exist as Shiobana Asuma alone. Asuma points to himself. From that day on, the story would belong to them both. Promising he will grant his wish, Asuma extends his hand. With tears in his eyes, Shiobana watches him. Covering his face as he cries, the young man's shoulders shake. Pointing forward with a smile, Asuma encourages him. Smiling, the young man agrees. Bumping his fist, he says, "Thank you." Reflecting on the promise of having his wish granted, the young man sighs. Smiling, he says that just hearing it is enough to satisfy him. But he wonders if there's anything he can do to help, since Asuma is the legendary Archmage from 3,000 years ago. Confirming with a confident smile, Asuma ignites the young man's spirit. Then, Shiobana mentions that after class today, he went to a magic cafe in Ebisu. Asking Asuma to explain the meaning of an enchantment he heard, he rubs the back of his neck. Explaining that a girl named Lily was proudly reciting it, and that he'd like to analyze it, he tries to look serious. Laughing a little awkwardly, the young man nearly loses his breath. Saying that if it's something like that, it's a piece of cake, Asuma snaps his fingers. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet begins to crack. Turning in surprise at what's happening, the two look at each other, stating that it seems to be time to wake from the dream and that their time is up. Asuma raises his hand. Thanking Asuma for bringing him back, Shiobana takes a deep breath. Smiling, he says that from now on, he'll take a peek at their story. Replying that he'll do the same, Asuma nods. Reaching for Shiobana's spirit as it fades, Asuma tries to hold on to it for a second longer. Left alone as the spirit's light completely vanishes, he closes his eyes. Clasping his hands, determined, even though the young man is now just a residual memory, Asuma strengthens his resolve. Deciding he will fulfill the boy's wishes and regrets, he clenches his fist. He resolves to do this, as it's the promise he couldn't keep 3,000 years ago, and he stares into the void. The scene shifts to Fukada Shion's residence in Tokyo, where silence fills the air. Kneeling before a large crystal, Fukada breathes in a controlled manner. Remaining on his knees for a moment, he concentrates. This is wurtzite boron nitride orichalcum, the hardest metal on Earth, mined from his family's mountains. Focusing his eyes, he firmly grips the hilt of his sword. Attacking the crystal with his weapon, he unleashes his accumulated force. Intact before, the crystal now has several cuts. Turning around, he realizes he's not alone in the courtyard. Addressing the person watching him, Fukada adjusts his stance. Introducing herself and saying it's an emergency and a special occasion, Mizuhara Miyuni makes her entrance. Scolding her, he reminds her that he had told her not to come in here. Ignoring the warning, Miyuni talks about the rarity of the metal used to make smart wands. Calling him crazy for using Wurtzite boron nitride orichalcum just for a test cut, she loses her patience. Replying that he's already watched the video she sent and couldn't believe Tenoji and Katakura were defeated, Fukada clenches his teeth. Asking if it wasn't exciting, she smiles maliciously. Explaining that he's only part of the S4 as a formality at the director's request, but that he had a certain respect for those two, Fukada adjusts his posture. Seeing them as the personification of the Academy's prestige, he lifts his chin. Declaring that he will have no mercy for those who threaten the institution's prestige, he clenches his fist. Agreeing enthusiastically, Miyun nods eagerly, warning that if he underestimates his opponent for being attributeless, he'll get seriously hurt, she points her finger. Finishing that, it will be exactly like what happened to the other two. Miyune shrugs. Declaring that with his family's secret arts, he will crush him in a magical duel, Fukada plants his feet on the ground. Raising his sword toward the moon, he makes an oath, stating that the Academy's authority is more important than a human life, and that he doesn't care if an accident happens. Fukada's voice hardens. Smiling, Miyune says she wants to see Shiobana Asuma's face smashed to a pulp. Asking if he's going to bring that person, she narrows her eyes, replying that, of course not, as it won't come to that. Fukada shakes his head. The pieces of the crystal on the ground begin to reassemble, moving toward each other. Confidently stating that his servant will be more than enough, he sheathes his sword. The next morning, Shiobana approaches the duel site. With a smile, he says, "All right, let's go." Shiobana strides forward, heading to the magical duel. Defined as a formal battle sanctioned between students, the magic duel is based on the use of magic within a mage training institution. Based on the outcome of these duels, students are ranked and granted privileges within the academy. This hierarchy determines each student's social status and opportunities, shaping the school environment. In the arena's waiting room, Lily finishes explaining the details to Shiobana. She questions him, pointing out that this is common knowledge for any student at the academy. Asuma thanks her, explaining it's the first time he's ever heard of it. Ruri frowns, asking if his memory confusion is still acting up. Clutching her skirt tightly, she tries to hide her concern. Clenching her fists with determination, Lily decides she needs to support him properly. Realizing she ended up in his waiting room during her explanation, she blushes. Fantasizing that she's getting some kind of special treatment, Ruri gets carried away. Calling her name, Asuma tugs on one of her braids to bring her back to reality. Holding up two ties, he asks which one she thinks looks better. After she points one out, he agrees it seems like the best choice. Thanking her with a smile, Asuma puts on the chosen tie and adjusts the knot. Lily covers her face with her hand, lamenting that her tendency to fantasize might be a disease. Asuma stays focused, asking if his usage time for the magic analysis room will increase if his rank goes up. Startled that this is what he's worried about, Lily confirms that yes, of course it will increase. With a calm look, Asuma takes a deep breath and replies that this was his main concern. Sighing, she admits she really can't understand him. Asuma adjusts his collar, explaining that Fukada is calling him a harmful presence who disrupts student peace and engages in inappropriate behavior. Lily scratches her chin, confirming that's the story Fukada's side is spreading. She pulls out her phone and hands it to him, asking if he's seen the Academy's newspaper. The paper announces the duel between Fukada and Asuma, the attribute-less NEET, framing it as a punishment. Silence falls. He reacts with disdain, remarking that there's nothing to be done. Shocked by his calmness, Lily's eyes widen. She lists his titles, explaining that Fukada-senpai is a master of Japanese magic swordsmanship, heir to the rare metal mines, and donates billions to the academy. That's why no one at the academy dares to challenge him, Lily finishes. Desperately, Lily closes her eyes, concluding that public opinion will be manipulated to make it seem like justice is on his side. After listening to everything, Asuma simply says he understands. Turning around, he calls out, "Lily-san." With his tie now fixed, he asks her what she thinks of his look. "It's perfect," Lily replies, straightening her posture. Thanking her with a smile, Asuma adjusts his shirt cuff. He turns to leave, announcing he's off to the duel. Lily is stunned, realizing he didn't listen to a word she said. Walking alone down the hall toward the arena, Asuma takes a deep breath. But someone stops in his path. He recognizes him as Isaiah. They face each other for a moment, sizing each other up. Asuma steps closer and whispers something to him. Isaiah's expression changes at the unexpected revelation, his eyes widening. He pulls away and leaves, passing Lily in the hallway. She questions him, confused by the sudden change of plans. The Central Coliseum is packed with students, buzzing with excitement. As Fukada enters the arena, he's met with supportive shouts from the crowd. His fans hold up signs, begging him to finish his opponent in an instant. Asuma enters the arena and walks forward as Lily watches with concern and Miyuni smiles confidently. In the arena, Asuma and Fukada face each other, ready for the duel. Fukada lifts his chin, saying that the fact Asuma showed up without running is worthy of praise. Asuma simply thanks him, not losing his composure. Fukada's tone shifts as he asks a question. He narrows his eyes, asking who Asuma really is. The question startles him, making him wonder if Fukada has realized he's a reincarnate. Fukada continues, stating he takes the fact that Asuma defeated Tenji and Katakura of the S4 very seriously. He reinforces his question, believing it couldn't have been a fluke or a coincidence. He insists once more, wanting to know who he is. Emanating a powerful pressure, Fukada makes the crowd fall back, but Asuma remains calm and unfazed by the pressure. "I'm Asuma, nothing more, nothing less," he answers, his voice firm. Surprised that he isn't shaken even by his battle aura, Fukada lets out a smirk. "It doesn't matter who you are," he says, relaxing his arm. He takes his stance, stating he won't underestimate him and will face him with full determination. "I will crush this pest with all my strength," Fukada declares, pointing his sword. "That's exactly what I was hoping for." "I won't be holding back either," Shiobana replies, planting his feet on the ground. Preparing for the fight to begin, the two study each other, and then the duel finally begins. Positioned in the dueling arena, Shiobana Asuma and Fukada Sakani face each other, measuring the distance between them. Raising his hand, Professor George East prepares to start the magic duel, but Fukada interrupts him with a gesture, asking him to wait. Watching after the interruption, Asuma waits. Stating his intent to crush him with all his power, Fukada declares he is also prepared to offer mercy out of pride for his noble family. He offers to let Asuma lose by forfeit if he hands over a letter of withdrawal right now, extending his hand. He claims this would prevent his opponent from getting hurt and apologizes to the students gathered to watch. Fukada lifts his chin, asking what he has to say. Turning to the referee, Asuma asks how many spots his ranking will increase if he wins the match. The professor lays out the facts, explaining that Fukada is the Federation President and S rank, while Shiobana is F rank and 1200th in line. He concludes that if Shiobana were to win, his student rank would become A, then watches for a reaction. Replying that he understands, Asuma accepts the information. Addressing Fukada, he says he'd be willing to lose by forfeit if Fukada raises his rank to S immediately. He adds that this way, Fukada would avoid getting hurt, and also apologizes to the assembled students. Fukada's eye twitches in response as he grits his teeth. Reacting with shock at the audacity, the crowd of students squirms. Commenting to her friends that she can't believe he actually said that, Lily nearly drops her phone. Fukada loses his composure, shouting that it's been a long time since he's seen a fool so unaware of his own place. He spits out his words, swearing he won't forgive him, even if he cries and begs, and that he'll beat him to a pulp. But Asuma, unfazed, simply invites him to proceed. Turning to Professor George East, Fukada pressures him to begin. With the signal, the duel finally begins. Knowing his opponent is the reincarnation of Saiwan and that holding back risks a loss, Asuma opens his receptacles. Therefore, he decides to use ancient magic at full power right from the start. Manipulating the energy for the spell, his hands trace invisible paths. A complex magic circle materializes around him. The students in the audience stare in shock, their eyes wide. They've never seen this kind of magic, which isn't listed in the modern library. A sphere of power forms in Asuma's hand, radiating light, and he fires the devastating attack. Reacting quickly, Fukada raises an earthen wall to defend himself. The spell collides with the barrier, shattering the structure. Noticing his opponent activated an automatic interception magic, Asuma watches as sand spreads across the arena. Comparing him to the cunning King Saiwan, Fukada narrows his eyes. He comments that just as the report said, his opponent uses unknown magic, but states it won't work on him. Drawing a weapon, Fukada declares he'll end it all with a single blow. The sudden action catches his attention, and Asuma adjusts his focus. The weapon is revealed to be a physical blade that also functions as a magic staff. Analyzing it, Asuma notes that he has combined his battle aura with an earthen barrier, creating an impenetrable absolute space. Within this defense, any attack will be automatically intercepted and countered with a swift strike. Preparing for his next move, Asuma controls his breathing. Finding the technique interesting, he decides he'll be the one to break Siwon's absolute space. Calling him an irregular mutation, Fukada claims he is a nuisance who disturbs the harmony of the prestigious academy. Stating that he rejects his very existence, Fukada takes a step forward. He raises his blade, proclaiming that the daily accumulation of training, discipline, and spiritual forging is what gives birth to a magic swordsman's strength. He points his sword, challenging him and doubting that a mere non-attribute magic user could stop his blade. The student audience stirs, recognizing the stance as Fukada's magnificent finishing sword strike. Fukada begins his charge toward Asuma. The ground turns to mud, trapping Asuma's feet. Understanding that it's a magical stagnation system that has sealed off his evasion, he adjusts his body. Preparing his sword for the attack, Fukada readies his stance. He takes a deep breath, advancing to deliver his secret Fukada-style art, the Mikazuki-zan. Mizuhara Mune's eyes widen as she comments that the slash can slice through the hardest metal on Earth, wondering what Asuma-kun will do. The powerful arcing strike closes in on Asuma, who remains trapped. Regretting that he even bothered to tie his necktie, he says there's nothing for it as he undoes it. He casts his ancient hardening magic, Magi Metallize, on the tie, shaping the fabric. Transforming into a blade, the tie is wielded for defense. With an upward motion, he blocks the strike with the newly created blade. Reacting with disbelief at the block, Fukada is momentarily speechless. The crowd squirms in their seats, shocked and unable to believe he stopped the sword strike with his tie, using another magic that doesn't exist in the library. The clash between the two blades disperses into the air. Activating the ancient magic of disappearance particle veil, Asuma dissolves the ground that held him. He vanishes before his opponent's eyes, disappearing like dust. Surprised, Fukada turns, trying to locate his presence and questioning how he could have disappeared. But appearing right behind him, Asuma announces it's time for a counterattack. Preparing for the counterattack, Asuma adjusts his stance. Surprised, Fukada turns, questioning how he could have disappeared and losing a precious second. His eyes widen in reaction to the sudden disappearance. Composing himself, he takes a defensive stance and declares that the next time Asuma appears, it will be his end. Protecting himself within his absolute space, he plants his feet firmly on the ground. Considering his barrier invincible, Fukada leaves no openings. Appearing behind him, Asuma attacks directly, but Asuma's blade is blocked by a hand made of stone. Shouting that he's got him, Fukada launches a surprise attack from behind one of the stone pillars, the third-style sword flash. Instead of defending, Asuma parries his own blade with his hand. Spinning quickly, he hurls it toward Fukada. Calling him reckless for throwing his sword away, Fukada considers it a mere suicide attempt. Asuma accelerates, running between the stone hands that try to stop him. He weaves his way through, dodging and destroying the rock attacks rising from the ground. The tie he had thrown transforms into a stake, surprising Fukada. Their swords clash, testing each other on impact. Fukada recoils from the blow, sliding across the floor. Retrieving and wielding his original sword, Asuma announces that this is the second one. In the audience, Lily points at the tie in shock. Now wielding two swords, the second being another transformed tie, Asuma asks his opponent which one he prefers. Admitting he intended to decide the match with that single blow, he praises how incredible Saiwan is. Fukada takes a deep breath, replying that he is the first to ever get so close to his domain. Therefore, he will reveal his secret sword technique for the first time, and tells Asuma to feel honored. Staring him down, Asuma awaits the next move. Announcing his magic sword technique, the nebulous full moon, Fukada advances. He delivers the first strike, surprising Asuma. He continues the attack with his second magic sword, the nebulous new moon, linking the slash. Explaining that it's a secret technique he can't possibly dodge, Mizuhara Miyune grips her seat. The blow hits Asuma head-on, pushing him back. Fukada immediately activates another spell on his sword, the Mook Rain Bomb, and speeds up the execution. A massive explosion engulfs Asuma's entire body, taking over the arena. The impact throws him backward, and his sword falls from his hand. From the stands, Lily screams Shiobana-kun's name. The audience holds its breath, watching in shock as he lies motionless on the arena floor. Observing his fallen opponent, Fukada wonders if he put too much power into the blow and ended up killing him. He turns to the referee, coldly repeating the question. The referee hurries over to check on Asuma's condition. Fukada sighs, declaring that he will humbly accept the punishment if the death was an accident. As he approaches the body, Professor George East flinches and recoils instinctively. Surprised by his reaction, Fukada is taken aback for a moment. Rising from the ground, Asuma emerges, shrouded in power. He faces his opponent with his uniform torn at the chest, regaining his balance. Unable to believe it, Fukada asserts that his secret technique should have been a fatal blow. Admitting he was completely mistaken, Asuma lowers his chin. He continues, saying he thought he was giving it his all, but had been subconsciously looking down on his opponent, leaving the audience shocked. Mizuhara Miyuni's eyes widen as she watches, remembering that his opponent is the reincarnation of Shion from Earth. Lily holds her breath, watching the scene with an apprehensive expression. Getting ready, Asuma announces that now the real fight is about to begin. J16, screaming that it's impossible he took his secret technique unharmed, Fukada loses control. Taking his stance, Asuma shows he's ready to fight. Declaring that the real fight is about to begin, he takes a deep breath. Assuming his combat stance, Fukada decides to attack once more. He advances, determined to defeat him with his secret sword technique. Asuma calculates, knowing his body's mana adaptability is excellent, but he struggles with physical strength. Considering the significant damage he took earlier, he understands he needs to find a quick conclusion to the fight. He closes his eyes, recalling ancient magic studies on the mana body, what's now known as the magic circuit. He rapidly condenses the mana within him, compressing it to its limit and forcing his body to respond. The mana circulates swiftly through his body, temporarily enhancing his physical abilities. Fukada is intimidated as he watches the energy completely envelop him. Asuma lifts his chin, stating that even though it's his first time trying this, he pulled it off easily. He concludes that a real fight against a strong enemy is the perfect environment to conduct theoretical constructions and experimentation simultaneously. He points his feet forward. Taking a step to begin, he dives into the action. Believing he's found an opening to attack, Fukada reacts. Watching him in silence, Asuma waits for the right moment. Advancing and yelling that this is the finishing blow, Fukada unleashes his peak. He loses his breath as he delivers his sword attack. Focusing on his movement, Asuma reads every detail, moving in an instant and reappearing right behind his opponent. He breaks Fukada's read on the attack. Surprised by the speed and questioning how a human can move so fast, Fukada turns his head. Declaring that spot to be fatal, he orders his familiar to advance. A stone hand emerges from the ground, trying to grab Asuma, but it's promptly destroyed by a kick, shattering into pieces. Turning around, Asuma is surprised by something. Declaring that with this he won't be able to move freely anymore, Fukada narrows his eyes, and emerging to trap his leg, another stone hand grabs him. Freeing himself and shattering the hand that held him, Asuma destroys the bond. The stone familiar reveals itself fully as a giant golem, imposing its presence. Looking up to face the imposing creature, Asuma assesses its size. Smashing it against the ground, he solves the problem with a single brutal move. Reacting with astonishment to the devastating impact, the audience falls silent. He freezes the entire arena with a magic circle, turning everything to ice. Stating that with this, Fukada can no longer use his automatic interception or his familiar's attack, Asuma finishes his argument. Stammering, Fukada can't form a response. Then Asuma walks toward him and declares that it's over. She won. Refusing to accept it, Fukada says that he is the one who carries the Association of Magic Swordsmen and is the heir of the Fukada family. Screaming that something like this can't happen, he trembles. But Asuma raises his hand, conjuring the spell Makaru-a, and a flash of light strikes Fukada directly. The scene changes to 3,000 years in the past, where Shawan was studying ancient magic. Nearby, a woman named Sei asks Shawan to step away. Turning, Shion addresses Lord Asma. Explaining that this is a new magic that extracts hidden abilities, he states it can increase inherent mana by about 10 times. Reacting to the explanation and finding it incredible, Lord Asma stares at the scroll, but Shion warns that the magic has the side effect of dissociating and manifesting the caster's brutal side. Stating that further refinement is necessary, Sei comments that they have finally found a prospect for a formal human experiment. Questioning who the candidate for the dangerous experiment is, Asma crosses his arms. Answering that she has someone in mind, Sei takes a deep breath. She concludes by describing him as an excellent subject who doesn't complain about anything. Staring at her for a moment, Asuma ponders. He approves, saying he understands and will continue to trust her new magic. Responding that it is an undeserved honor, Sei silently adjusts her armor. Back in the present, Fukada's expression changes drastically. Laughing, Fukada announces that the prim and proper guy is gone. Celebrating that it's been a long time since he's been in the present world, he says he's going to slash non-stop. He decides to start with Asuma, who irritates him deeply and grinds his teeth. Charging forward, Fukada leaps to deliver a blow. Analyzing the attack's speed, Asuma realizes he is abnormally boosting his magic circuit to enhance his physical abilities. He blocks the sword strike just in time, avoiding the worst. He ends up with a cut on his leg during the clash and bends his knee. Screaming for him to stop running, Fukada charges forward without hesitation. He unleashes a sequence of strikes that destroy the ground around Asuma, turning the floor into rubble. Watching him amidst the debris, Asuma remains calm. He concludes that Fukada has returned to Saiwan's original power, Adjusting his thoughts, he touches his chin, wondering if others also regain their past life abilities when they reach an extreme state. Even if that's the case, he prepares for what's to come. Opening his eyes, he states that his opponent is 10,000 years too early. "Come on and fight, what's your problem?" Fukada spits out the words. Leaping into the air, Fukada prepares a final blow over his opponent. He raises his blade, claiming he's cornered him and can no longer escape. In the audience, students yell for everyone to run and not get hit. Asuma understands the intention, observing that Xian's barrage of attacks was all calculated to corner him in that exact spot. Realizing that even in his enraged state, his enemy's calculating nature remains intact, Fukada grips the hilt of his sword. Preparing to use his final secret technique, he sharpens his gaze, and he unleashes a massive barrage of arcing slashes. Asuma tracks the movement, identifying the technique as a simultaneous volley of dozens of nebulous new moon strikes. Knowing that if he takes the attack, not even he can predict what will happen. He holds his breath. But he remembers he should have warned him sooner, and he says his opponent is 10,000 years too early to face him. He manifests multiple magic circles to intercept Xian's secret technique, neutralizing the advance. For the students in the stands, it all happens in the blink of an eye, the vision distorting. And using that split second, he positions himself as the night parade of 100 demons approaches. Asuma instantly constructs a magic circle, placing it right in front of Fukada's barrage of attacks. The strikes collide with the newly created magic barrier, exploding in light and shards. Expanding, the magic circle forms a giant three-dimensional lens. As Xian's first attack touches the surface of the lens positioned by Asuma, it distorts. But the lens wasn't just the ancient analysis magic, analyze. By adding a new arrangement to it, Asuma redefined its purpose. Instead of automatically analyzing the target, it transmitted the raw, exposed information directly to him. Performing a high-speed analysis using his brain's computational function, he processes everything at a transfer speed close to that of light. No matter how fast the sword flashes were, they couldn't surpass the speed of light. Subjected to analysis and computation within Asuma's brain, the vast cluster of unprocessed magical information reorganizes itself, and the time he took to finish all the processing was a mere 0.1 seconds. He simply waits amidst the bombardment of attacks, not even blinking. "Break into a million pieces!" Fukada screams, losing control. Continuing his furious assault within the magical space, he tears through the air. Extending a hand toward his opponent, Asuma changes the pace. He concentrates a sphere of power in his hand, stabilizing the spell. Reacting with surprise to his action, Fukada hesitates. Closing his hand and dispersing the energy, Asuma disarms the expectation. He lunges forward in a swift motion, attacking his opponent. Reeling from the impact of the blow, Fukada slides across the frozen ground, revealing that the final strike of the technique is Xian's own downward slash. Asuma points his blade. Getting up and questioning what he is, Fukada loses his breath. Calling him a bastard and charging to attack, he ignores his fear, but Asuma stops the blade with just 2 fingers. Staring at him in complete shock, Fukada doesn't understand. Breaking the tip of his sword, Asuma shatters the symbol of his strength, and landing a direct punch to Fukada's face, he ends the fight. Falling defeated to the ground near the broken tip of his sword, Fukada struggles to breathe. Casting a menacing shadow over him, Asuma warns that if he doesn't surrender obediently, he will stab him. Panicking and realizing he's about to be killed, Fukada trembles. With his broken sword on the ground, he finally surrenders. The crowd goes wild, celebrating the victory. Asuma asks Fukada if he has learned his place. Lying broken on the arena floor, Fukada's sword no longer responds. Defeated, he finally surrenders. Celebrating the victory, the crowd erupts as Asuma stands over his fallen opponent. Asking Fukada if he's learned his place, Asuma keeps his eyes locked on him. Still on the ground, Fukada asks to pose a question, and Asuma allows him to proceed. Questioning how it was possible to predict the vast number of trajectories of the night parade of 100 demons, he gasps for air, stating that it's impossible for a human brain to perform such a feat. Fukada narrows his eyes. Asking if he knows about the Academy's quantum computer, Asuma changes his tone, explaining that he applied the calculator's principle to his own mana-boosted brain and managed to replicate it. He crosses his arms, reacting in disbelief and repeating that he reproduced a quantum computer's calculations in his brain. Fukada tries to understand. Confirming this, Asuma comments that the concept of science is quite useful and compatible with his ancient magic. Revealing that the reason he was able to develop this countermeasure was thanks to his new friend, he closes his eyes. In a memory, Lily warns him that Xian has an aggressive alternate personality that he would need to defeat. Putting him on alert, the information shifts his focus. Shouting that it's absurd and impossible, that there's no way a mage like him could exist, Fukada falters. Seeing Asuma in his own reflection, Fukada realizes the difference, stating he is not a mere mage. Asuma corrects himself. Declaring that he is a grand mage, he finishes. Euphorically celebrating the outcome of the fight, the crowd of students shakes the Colosseum. Celebrating the victory, Lily shouts, while Tennoji Kiryu looks annoyed, and Mizuhara Miyune watches thoughtfully. Continuing to watch amidst the crowd's celebration, Mizuhara remains silent. From a hallway, Isaiah watches the scene, and then smiles. Pulsing with the crowd's cheers after the duel's end, the entire arena radiates energy. Spreading quickly, the news tells of how the attributeless boy defeated the Club Federation president in a magical duel with a shocking end. An announcement sweeps across campus, informing everyone that student Asuma Shiobana's rank has jumped to Class A, 23rd place. Interacting with the screen to see the details of his new classification, he opens the list. The advantages of rank A stand out, including a higher recommendation score, the right to run for the council election, and curriculum customization. Smiling as he sees the expanded authorization to use the magic analysis room, Asuma declares his objective has been achieved. With this, he will no longer need to request use of the room every day, and can secure computing time on the quantum computer. Stating that the theoretical framework for hybrid magic is already complete, he notes that he just needs to design the magic circle to ensure its reproducibility. To find this ideal design pattern, he will use the quantum computer's computing function and can't wait to see what it creates. A new day begins in a quiet suburban house as the world slowly awakens. Inside his room, Asuma sits on the bed, sipping a cup of tea. Looking at his phone, he notes that after a week of being reincarnated, his understanding of modern society has deepened. Deciding to combine the history he learned at the academy with his own knowledge, he drops a sugar cube into his drink. He recalls that in this Earth's history, a cultural discontinuity occurred sometime in the last 3,000 years, and his eyes narrow. This means some things were passed down from ancient to modern times, but others were not. The conclusion makes him think. Caused by the Great Calamity, this rupture led to the decline of magic and the rise of science. Because of this, the structural connection to the magical civilization of 3,000 years ago is now very weak, remaining only as a minority practice. The ancient magic that was barely passed down came to be treated as occultism. Bringing ancient magic back into the spotlight, science transformed it into modern magic that anyone can use. Concluding that the great kingdom of Gaia, which had imprisoned him, perished long ago, he takes a deep breath. Realizing he is living here as a reincarnated being, just like Kiryu, Isaiah, and Shion, he figures Miyune must also be at the academy. Elsewhere, Miyune of the Water stands surrounded by water. Continuing to ponder the situation in his room, Asuma presses his lips together. Considering that the four known as the S4 are not his only opponents, he has a hunch that that man might also be in the modern era. Appearing above the desk, a holographic alert cuts through the air. Turning to the screen and recognizing the alarm from his schedule, he approaches it. Reading that the deadline for the magic incense burner report is near, he states that he can write about his own invention right away. Sitting down at the desk in front of a notebook, Asuma readies his pen. Opening the notebook, he can't read the scribbled content and decides to use magic to erase only the ink from the surface. Lifting off the paper, the dark ink begins to vanish. Looking at the now legible text, he breathes slowly. Revealed on the page is a list of things Asuma wanted to do in life. After reading the first part, he finds the young man's list interesting. Continuing to read, the wishes speak of making friends, finding his lost family, and becoming a hero who protects everyone. Realizing this, he understands that the body's previous owner's wish was not for revenge. The concept of family comes up, and he reflects that it was something he disliked. Deciding he will fulfill the young man's wishes, he leaves the room. The next day, he walks through the courtyard of Ritsudo Magical Education High School. Approaching to start a conversation, Isaiah strikes one up. Declaring that real academy life starts now, Asuma walks on. In the hallway, a group of students whispers that the once invisible Asuma Shiobana has suddenly become a massive celebrity. With excitement in their voices, they claim Asuma didn't just take down the Club Federation president, but also Isaiah from the S4, the very person he's walking with now. Rumors are flying that he defeated Tennoji with a simple flick to the forehead, though one student expresses doubt, reminding the others that Asuma doesn't even have an attribute. As they move down the corridor, the duo leaves the rest of the students behind, wondering who he truly is. Now at a distance, Asuma asks Isaiah about their earlier conversation, and Isaiah confirms the application has already been sent. Explaining the details, Isaiah mentions they are leaving the S4 to form a new faction and should have a club room soon. Asuma offers a quick "good job" as he continues walking beside his partner. Suddenly, two girls come running toward them, shouting for them to wait a moment. Turning toward the students, the two men slow their pace, addressing him directly as Asuma Shiobana, a second year from Class A. The girls confront him, reporting her findings. One girl notes that he isn't a transfer student, but someone who has been at the school all along, before suddenly becoming a star. She goes on to say his skills are special class, and that he's been taking down S4 members one after another. Declaring her intent to interview the man of mystery, the reporter strikes a serious pose. Passing right by them without stopping, Asuma and Isaiah ignore the interruption. Left standing there, the girls from the journalism club are stunned to be brushed off so easily. Frustrated by the situation, the club reporter bites her lip. Turning to her colleague with a look of pure determination, they decide to chase after them down the hall. At the door of Class 2A, Asuma says goodbye to Isaiah, who promises to bring the results later. Stepping through the door, Asuma enters the classroom. Walking between the desks, he feels the weight of every student's gaze on him. He sits down next to Lily, leaving the murmurs behind. The reporters suddenly appear at his side, declaring they've been waiting to interview him. He flatly refuses, keeping his tone neutral. The girl crosses her arms, insisting she won't leave until he agrees. Pointing toward Lily, Asuma introduces her as his secretary in charge of scheduling. Stating that she is his trusted contact and they must seek her permission, he concludes by saying this can only be done after class. The reporter agrees and tells Lily she'll see her later. Leaning in close to Lily, Asuma whispers that he'll definitely owe her one for this. As Professor George East begins the lecture, Asuma reflects on how fame has its downsides. He really needs a peaceful spot in the academy. Lily looks over at him, thinking about how Shiobana is always counting on her. Lost in thought, she wonders if there's someone he likes and what kind of girl his girlfriend would be. The scene shifts to a pool where the water is churning. During swimming class, students are scattered throughout the lanes. A lone swimmer cuts through the water with incredible speed. Executing a perfect flip turn at the edge, he kicks off with power. He surges forward, his body moving with immense force. Two students watch his stroke in disbelief. Quickly overtaking the other competitors in the lane, he takes a commanding lead. A classmate clocks him at 35:05 seconds, announcing it's a new world record for high schoolers, set without using any magic. The other students cheer the feat as Asuma climbs out of the water. Pulling off his swim cap, he takes a deep breath. Asuma reflects that he's finally getting used to this body, but if he overdoes it, he's going to stand out far too much. Walking toward the locker room, he hopes Isaiah's club application gets approved quickly. Inside the locker room, several students are showering. Standing under the spray, he remembers that swimming was the final class of the day. He plans to head to the magic analysis room after getting Isaiah's report. He continues his shower, enjoying the moment. Suddenly, he notices the silhouette of a woman in the next stall. Spotting a swimsuit hanging nearby, he wonders if he accidentally walked into the women's locker room. Stepping out from the shower, Mizuhara Miyune appears before him. Turning toward him, she remarks that Asuma seems capable of anything. Sneaking up behind him, Miyune claims he is wonderful and that watching him swim made her tremble with excitement. Remaining silent, he simply watches the girl. He fixes his attention on the pendant she's wearing, staying on high alert. Closing the distance, she says she wants to know much more about him. Feeling her presence, Asuma concludes that she is no ordinary student. Miyune approaches him, saying she wants to know much more about him. Sensing her presence, Asuma realizes she is no ordinary student. He immediately warns her, noting that this is the men's locker room and she's entered the wrong place. Miyune simply replies that if it's the men's locker room, then she's in exactly the right place. Questioning the situation, he asks if she shouldn't leave before the other guys find her, but Miyune observes that there is no one else left. She claims that apparently it's just the two of them now. Looking around, Asuma realizes the locker room is indeed empty. Wondering when the others left, he notices the water on the floor starting to behave strangely. Miyune turns a valve on a pipe and asks if she can come over to his side. A barrier suddenly rises between the shower stalls. Realizing something is wrong, Asuma holds his breath. Identifying a magic circle in the water, he wonders if it's an attack. Seeing the water rise around his feet, he concludes the situation is dangerous. As Miyune closes in on him in the shower, Asuma decides he needs to create distance to analyze the situation and leaps away. Determined to get out, he runs toward the locker room door. Reaching the other side of the room near the exit, Asuma takes a deep breath. He tenses his body, preparing to bolt across the room, but Miyune chides him, saying it's mean to run away so suddenly. She is sitting calmly on one of the locker room benches, legs crossed. Asuma frowns, wondering what is going on and how she managed to catch up to him so fast. She then asks if that's exactly what he's thinking. Staring at her in silence, he tries to make sense of it. Miyune suddenly appears behind him and asks why he isn't getting changed. Remarking that his body is very stimulating, She steps back and mentions she'll get dressed too. Reflecting on whether she used teleportation magic, since he felt no incantation, he decides to observe for now. Opening his locker to grab his clothes, Asuma keeps his attention divided. As he begins to dress, he decides to play along with her to figure out her trap. Watching Miyun as she changes, he maintains a neutral posture. The towel she was using slides and hits the floor. She then tells him not to be so cautious, explaining that if she wanted to hurt him, she could have attacked at any time. Listening intently, he keeps his eyes fixed on her. Miyune grips her pendant and says, she just wanted him to know everything about her before making a decision. Calmly, he asks what she means by knowing everything. Miyun closes her locker door. Both are now fully dressed. Turning to him, she mentions she hasn't introduced herself yet. She introduces herself as Miyuna Mizuhara, the only female member of the S4 and the Academy's idol. Standing before her, Asuma just watches. Miyuna gets irritated by his lack of reaction and demands he show some emotion. Recognizing her, he confirms she is indeed Miyun of the Water. Reflecting on her movements, he concludes it will be dangerous if he can't uncover her secret. Noticing the magic Miyun used wasn't ancient magic, he wonders if she acquired it in the modern era. Seeing his tense expression, Miyun decides to explain why she wanted to be alone with him. Watching her closely, he waits for her to continue. She begins listing various creatures, such as praying mantises, fireflies, scorpions, and whale sharks. Still listening without understanding, Asuma tilts his head. Miyune explains that in many of these species, the female devours the male, a sacrifice some males even accept voluntarily. However, she claims no creatures exist where the male devours the female. Revealing her desire, she says she wants to be devoured by a strong, superior male. The declaration catches Asuma off guard. Surrounded by water, Miyune clarifies that she wants to be dominated by a powerful man who can surpass her, a member of the S4. Turning to Asuma, she says she smells a powerful male scent coming from him. She notes he's the one who defeated Kirio, Isaiah, and Shion. Approaching with a smile, Miyun makes the atmosphere feel heavy. Winking at him, she asserts that from what she can see, he is definitely a sadist. Confused by the term, Asuma tries to process it. Miyun then claims they are a perfect match, as he can be the lover to her complete masochist. She asks him to let her feel his strength. A rapid slash flashes past Asuma's face. Questioning if her speed exceeds Fukada's, he quickly realizes that's not the case. Concluding that this mysterious attack definitely has a trick to it, he narrows his eyes. Miyune challenges him not to disappoint her. Finding the situation interesting, he decides he will solve this mystery. Asuma calls her by name and declares that for someone like her to challenge him, she's still 10,000 years too early. He faces Miyun in the locker room. The two watch each other in silence as time ticks away. Near the sauna room, Miyun smiles at him. Suddenly, multiple slashes appear on Asuma's body. Blood splatters across his uniform and onto the floor. Miyuni proposes that if he can defeat her, she'll let him do whatever he wants with her. But she warns him, if he fails to even lay a finger on her, he will die. Pointing at him with a grin, Miyun narrows her eyes. Offering an alternative, she tells him to get on his knees. She claims that breaking a sadist like him would be quite a thrill. Looking at the clock on the wall, Asuma calculates his next move. Miyune pressures him to choose between submission or being sliced to pieces. More cuts erupt across his body. Blood sprays onto the locker room floor. She taunts him, saying she's disappointed and that he's too afraid to act. As the blood spreads, Shiobana Asuma stands wounded, but keeps his eyes locked on his opponent. Calling out to Mizuhara, he takes a deep breath. With a smile, Mizuhara Miyuni asks if he's begging for his life. Denying it, Asuma declares that this is a statement. He will never be under her command. He adds that he won't plead for his life, and that for starters, he doesn't even like her. Miyun's expression shifts. Asuma tells her that all her talk about strong males and domination doesn't interest him at all. He adds that he has no desire for a lover. Gesturing toward her, he remarks that she is 10,000 years too young to control him. They are on completely different scales, and his strength is overwhelming. Challenging him to turn the tide, Mizuhara declares that a man who cannot love her has no reason to exist. She lunges toward him. Something shatters under the impact of the attack. Manipulating the water around her, Mizuhara forms a sphere. She questions if that was his defensive magic, mocking how easily it broke. Standing amidst the water, Shiobana Asuma keeps his gaze sharp. She calls him pathetic. Asuma is hit head-on by a new attack. Thrown backward, a smile forms on his face. With the preparations complete, he claims everything is now ready. Miyune wonders what's happening, since he didn't even try to fight back. A magic circle manifests in Asuma's hand and activates, driving the light into his own chest. He doesn't hesitate. Miyune asks if he's gone mad, and plans to end it by his own hand. Firmly, Asuma tells her she's wrong. This is the ideal solution to break through her trap. He explains the first sign of trouble was his inability to perceive her attack trajectory. He had scattered transparent mines with analysis circles through the air. As a result, he predicted a coordinated attack coming from another phase. Realizing he was mistaken, he notes the attack followed a correct path and hit him. It's a strike so fast that he's already hit by the time he notices. The speed makes even Saiwan's swordsmanship look slow, but there was a trick behind it. Time seems to pass differently. He concludes it isn't time that's wrong, but his own perception. A delay magic is obstructing his senses, creating 1/100th of a second lag. There are no traces of Miyun casting it, meaning another conjurer is keeping it active. The image of an unknown caster comes to mind. Remembering the shower, the pieces fall into place. He was already under the spell's influence then, and the aerial minds finally analyzed the caster. Understanding the situation, he sighs. Thousands of artificial magical life forms, Miyun's familiars, are writhing on his body. Miyun had manipulated the shower water, mixing it with these familiars. The more they latch onto a target, the more the target's perception is delayed, and their consciousness slows. To Asuma, Miyuni's movements had become too fast to see. Deciding that this is the only way to purify the delay magic, he activates the circle. The direction he is blown in will be the key to turning the game. The magic circle shatters. A brutal force shoves him through the rock wall. Crashing through, Asuma falls into another room. Realizing it's the sauna, he looks up. His body hits the hot stones. The contact of the water on his skin triggers a massive explosion of steam. Turning amidst the heat, Asuma breathes in the scalding mist. He watches the water familiars evaporate from his skin. The creatures dissolve completely in the intense heat. His perception of time returns to normal, announcing that with the creatures destroyed and time normalized, the counterattack will begin. Rising through the steam, Asuma steadies his posture. He declares the counterattack starts now. Miyune despairs at the sight of her magical creatures being destroyed and wonders how he found out. Realizing he unraveled her perception delay magic, she bites her lip. However, she believes he hasn't noticed her other trap. Revealing the next point, Asuma says the same creatures that affected him are also on her body. Miyune is stunned. He explains the effect on her is high-speed agility magic, a combination of delay and acceleration. She panics as she realizes he's figured everything out. Her expression changes. Monitoring the movement outside the sauna, Asuma tracks every trail. Commenting on her speed, he states the fight is already over. His eyes lock onto the target. Able to see every trace of Miyun's movements, he exhales slowly. She launches a direct attack. The necklace around her neck activates. Miyun fires a water laser at Asuma. The attack hits, kicking up a curtain of steam and water. She realizes he is no longer there. Asuma appears silently behind her. Miyuni descends into a panic. Trying to escape, she runs desperately. Reappearing at her back, Asuma blocks her path. She stares at him, finding the situation impossible. Asuma states that escape is useless and that he will annihilate all the mana around her. A magic circle manifests. He grabs Miyun from behind and presses the circle against her back. The water familiars are expelled from Miyun's body. A pendant falls from her clothes. The whale-shaped object hits the floor. Mizuhara Miyune collapses, weakened. She realizes her mana is vanishing. Approaching her, Shiobana Asuma says the fight is over. He tells her to stop resisting. Miyune's expression shifts. Her body's form alters, revealing a man. Understanding the situation, Asuma realizes why he was in the men's locker room. The young man explains he can change his physical form by controlling the water inside himself. Now that his mana is depleted, his true form has been revealed. Sitting on the floor, he claims his desire to be dominated by a strong man wasn't a lie, and tells Asuma to laugh if he wants. Asuma covers him with a cloth. Clarifying immediately, he says the purpose of his attack was to eliminate the magical life forms, not to destroy his clothes. Bowing, he apologizes for the rudeness. The young man stares at him. He asks why Asuma is treating him like a girl. Shiobana Asuma replies that rudeness knows no gender and sincerely apologizes, offering to fix the necklace. Explaining calmly, he says that's how he interpreted the young man's attack. Remembering his desire to be dominated by a stronger man and his wish to judge him, the youth looks away. Concluding his thoughts, Asuma says that in other words, the boy expressed his affection in his own way. The young man stares, speechless. Asuma continues, saying he doesn't return hostility to those who show him none and can accept his method. Calling Asuma's name, the youth takes a deep breath. Recalling his own words, he notes that since he was defeated, Asuma could do whatever he wanted with him. Asuma states that since he won, he will give an order. Holding the necklace, he says he has goals to achieve at the academy, and that the boy's talent for magic design is exceptional. He orders him to leave the S4 and join his faction. Hesitating, the young man reminds him that Asuma said he didn't like him. Confirming it, Asuma declares that he indeed doesn't like him, but he also doesn't dislike the boy's recklessness in challenging him. Speechless, the boy watches as Asuma tells him to come along. Turning, Asuma suggests they get a new uniform before someone arrives, as they have business to discuss. Agreeing to obey Lord Asuma's command, the young man stands up. He follows him out of the room, a large smile forming on his face. Looming over the skyline, the Shibuya Municipal Mage Training Academy stands tall. In the headmaster's office, a man sits at his desk. A small mechanical creature named Q approaches. It settles on the arm of the man's chair, remaining quiet. Picking it up gently, he asks if his familiar found anything. The creature's eye begins to project images. A recording of Asuma is displayed. Leaning forward, the headmaster watches intently. Leaning on his desk, he analyzes the projected battle scenes. He claims it's impossible, as he's seen that student before. The creature projects another image. A student file identifies him as Shiomi Yuma student, a second-year Class A. Remembering the young man had attempted suicide and fallen into a critical coma, the headmaster frowns, but he recalls that he then miraculously awoke. The fight's images continue to play for the headmaster. Finally, understanding what happened, he takes a slow breath. The boy's appearance changed so much he couldn't recognize him. That is the reincarnated body of the great mage Asumar. His magic resistance and the absurd amount of mana in his body leave no doubt. The student's suicide attempt allowed Asumar's soul to reincarnate, concluding that the flow of causality is truly inescapable. He closes his eyes for a moment. The chain that binds them to fate has just forged its first link. Finding the situation interesting, he comments that this is also the fate of those bound by the chain of destiny. He then decides he will sever his ties right then and there, and he will do it in the name of King Grand Gaia. The small creature rubs against his hand. Remembering something, the headmaster stands up. He offers his familiar a reward, a high-quality magic stone from the Sumeragi Corporation. The creature devours the stone with satisfaction. Alone in his office, the headmaster watches the city as his familiar emits a soft sound. At the Mage Academy, philosophy class is about to begin. The teacher and students seem tense. Only Shiobana Asuma remains calm in his seat reading a book. Starting the lesson, the teacher begins to talk about the history of philosophy in Greece. Asuma's presence in the classroom draws the attention of some female students. For his part, the teacher just hopes the class with the student who defeated the fearsome Mr. George ends peacefully. Next to Asuma, Lily looks nervous. A notification from the journalism club pops up on her tablet. Messages demand she get an interview with Asuma at any cost. The bell rings, and the teacher announces the end of the first period. Turning around, he's relieved that everything went smoothly. When Asuma stands up, Lily calls his name. Trying to start a conversation, she says she wanted to talk about what happened the day before. He stares at Lily in silence, waiting for her to continue. Remembering something, he comments that he really put Miss Lily in a difficult situation. Recalling the recent events, she says it was the only thing she could think of. But Shiobana Asuma states that she was a great help. He then says he hasn't forgotten his promise, leaving her confused. Referring to the promise to pay her back, he keeps his tone neutral. Agreeing with his statement, the girl takes a deep breath. Approaching her, Asuma says that from now on he hopes they can get along. Stammering a confirmation, Lily tries to understand what he means. Turning away, he announces that he's leaving for the day. Calling for him to wait, she reaches out, but he continues walking down the hall. Alone, Asuma prepares for what's to come. He declares that this will be the most important day since his reincarnation. Today, he will focus all his wisdom, and he will create a new, revolutionary magic that doesn't exist in this world. Walking towards a door, Asuma ends the thought. Today, Asuma will use all his wisdom. He will create a new, revolutionary magic that doesn't exist in this world. Then, he walks through a door. Stopping as he enters the room, Asuma looks up. He observes what is in front of him. A humanoid figure floats before him. The figure opens its eyes. Asuma stares back. Bowing, he apologizes for the delay. The creation refers to Asuma as its master. Commenting on the project's status, Asuma says it's already operational. He explains that he inserted his wisdom as programming parameters to create a fully autonomous AI assistant. And although it was a side project for developing new magic, it was completed surprisingly quickly. Touching the artificial intelligence's face, Asuma tests its stability. The AI opens its eyes and announces that the preparations for the simulation are complete. The AI informs him that if the new magic's theory is to be put into practical use, the final experiment will be necessary. Stating that the quantum analysis computer can reproduce thousands of patterns in the room, Asuma crosses his arms. He then says that this is good and ideal. The artificial intelligence suggests they begin immediately. Bowing, she agrees to her master's orders. Time passes as the two work at a holographic console. Asuma crosses his arms, analyzing the data. He reflects that he tried to write an AI assistant program to understand modern magic theory, but created something high performance instead. He concludes that modern science isn't bad, and if he continuously teaches it his knowledge, the AI will become an excellent assistant. And for general knowledge about the academy, he'll depend on Lily. The final experiment simulation begins, and Asuma approves. He asks to analyze the experiment's data in real time, as holographic projections perform magic. The screen displays a calculating status while one of the projections executes a spell. The two observe the results as the calculations continue. The calculation bar progresses, and the system projects a sandwich and a coffee for Asuma. The artificial intelligence offers him a cup of coffee. Shiobana Asuma stares at the AI for a moment, and then smiles. The calculation process continues for a long period. Noticing how much time has passed, he comments that his student A rank extended his authority to use the room. The AI calls him master, and he asks what it is. Informing him that he seems a bit fatigued, she recommends 8 hours or more of sleep and rest. Crossing his arms, Asuma questions the statement. The AI confirms, explaining that his vital signs are unstable and the mana flow in his body is slightly disrupted. Reflecting that he has been fighting continuously, he recognizes that the rapid increase and decrease in his mana are contributing factors. He concludes that this world after reincarnation is very stimulating, and that he seems to have gotten completely carried away. Questioning about reincarnation, the AI tries to understand, but Asuma just says he'll be careful. Then, he thanks her for the warning. Reacting with surprise, the AI states that thanks from someone like him are undeserved, as she is just an aggregate of source code. Continuing, she declares she is not a being who deserves her master's gratitude. Disagreeing, Asuma assures her that her thought routine is human, and that he, as her creator, can vouch for it. Deciding that if she is human, she needs a name, he pauses. Remembering that her GPU is German-made, he decides to use the German name for administrator, so he names her Val. As her creator, Asuma asks if she will accept the name. Thanking him, Val humbly accepts the name she has been given. She looks at her master. Asuma states that the richness of her emotions is proof that she is human. Val then smiles. The system continues the calculation process. Informing him that the calculation will be completed soon, she reports that so far, the virtual experiment is proceeding without errors. Concluding that the practical use of the new magic seems like it will work, Asuma relaxes. An emergency message arrives, and he wonders who the sender could be. The sender is the academy's headmaster. The message summons him to the headmaster's office immediately, and Asuma questions its meaning. Reflecting that his new magic is almost complete, he takes a deep breath. He concludes that he cannot ignore a direct summons from the one who governs the entire academy. Ordering Val to continue the simulation as is, Asuma receives her confirmation, and if there are surplus resources, he asks her to run a program code to send materials to a student named Isaiah on his behalf. Val confirms she understood the instruction. She informs him that the headmaster's office is on the top floor of the central building. Turning around, Asuma leaves the room. The headmaster's familiar watches him leave and begins to follow him. The creature follows him closely through the hallways. Continuing on his way, Asuma doesn't notice he's being followed. The scene takes us back 3,000 years to the kingdom of Grand Gaia. The place was being attacked by flying creatures, with bodies scattered everywhere. A soldier despairs, asking what kind of things those were in the sky. His partner says they aren't humans or monsters, perhaps unknown invaders. Then, a powerful hooded figure appears in front of them, floating in the air. The soldier yells they can't retreat in order to protect the kingdom's people. Another person warns a coordinated attack is coming, asking to alert the king. But the girl replies it's useless, as it was already too late for that. Just then, a giant energy beam is fired right at them. The two look up in pure panic, with nowhere to run from the attack. But suddenly, Asmar appears and steps in front of the blow. The hooded enemy is surprised, not understanding what just happened. Asmar then destroys the enemy's defense with a crystal power. He appears amidst the debris, staring down the invaders with determination. High above, the other creatures show confusion at this turnaround. Wasting no time, the hero invokes a magic circle. He charges forward, breaking the enemy's magic barriers one by one. With a confident look, he prepares a giant and very powerful ice spell. Then, he uses his magic to defend against a monster's attack. The sunlight shines again as he stands victorious on the battlefield. The two soldiers he saved look at him, completely relieved and impressed. The woman recognizes him, calling him the great Archmage Lord Asmar. Asmar then orders the three to report the situation to the Senate immediately, but soon after, his gaze fills with sadness and deep regret. He regrets not being able to avoid the sacrifice of so many promising warriors. One of his companions calls him, and he turns with a grim expression. Just then, his 4 subordinates arrive to join the battle alongside him. One of them, Curio, laments that they couldn't arrive in time at another district. Isaiah, the wind user, tries to cheer them up, saying at least they eliminated the invaders. Miuna, the water user, wonders what these creatures are, as she doesn't recognize them. Shaywan, the earth user, says they appeared out of nowhere, as if from another world. With that, Asmar orders everyone to stay alert against these mysterious invaders. From afar, a powerful figure watches the scene, finding it an impressive display. Asmar then turns sharply, realizing a group of people is approaching. It is none other than the kingdom's ruler, Melchior, who praises him as an Archmage. Immediately, Asmar and his squad kneel before the king of Gran Gaia. The king says it is all right, and asks them to rise. Worried, Asmar warns that the place is dangerous, asking the king to return to the palace, but the ruler replies that he knows, showing he doesn't care about the risk. He explains he needed to see the whole situation with his own eyes, and thanks to Asmar, he could witness the invaders, the so-called Omegas. Asmar reflects that everything happened according to the king's prophecy, stopping the invaders there. The king praises him again, but Asmar's reaction intrigues the ruler. He notices Asmar is injured, but the mage says it's nothing, just a scratch. The king places his hand on his shoulder, and a strange energy begins to emerge. Asmar gets worried about the king, but he insists on helping with the wound. The king then explains he possesses no magical power, but rather the gift to guide his people. He states his mission is to protect the people of Gran Gaia, for that is what he was born to do. He tells the legend of the magic staff and the Book of Wisdom. He reveals that the staff is actually Asmar himself, the great mage. The king would be the book, and as such, he promises to protect the kingdom from all evil. Asmar bows, saying the king's words do him great honor. The ruler says he is counting on him, and Asmar flashes a very confident smile. The scene cuts back to the present, showing our hero in a uniform. He walks down a hallway, wondering why he had that memory of the past, but he decides to ignore it for now, keeping focus on what needs to be done. Upon knocking on the room door, a voice calls him by the name Yuma and asks him to enter. The door opens with a bright light, and he enters the room with a serious expression. He finds the place strange, as he was summoned by the director, but no one is there. Suddenly, a purple magic circle appears on the ceiling right above him. Another magic circle appears at his feet, taking our hero completely by surprise. He is teleported to an empty room and wonders what that place is. Quickly, he realizes he fell into a teleportation spell and goes on alert. Suddenly, a bluish robotic eye lights up in the darkness, observing everything. A small, shadowy creature then appears out of nowhere, right in front of him. With an annoyed look, he finally realizes that everything was a trap. The creature in front of him lets out a giggle as if mocking the danger. Asuma is still a bit confused, wondering if this really was a trap. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake, and rocks shatter all around. From the rubble, a giant robot emerges, with the creature controlling it all. Asuma realizes the academy chairman really is trying to end his life. Then he stares down the robot and warns that the director is now an unforgivable enemy. But Asuma feels no magical pressure. He feels underestimated that they sent such weak assassins after him. The robot's cannon begins to charge, glowing with intense energy. His eyes widen at the last second, realizing the incoming danger. Without warning, the machine fires a super powerful energy beam right at him, but with one move, he manages to dodge the attack by a hair's breadth. He faces the robot with a serious look, ready to counterattack. He wonders if that was a magic bullet, but he finds it strange, as he felt no sign of magic activation beforehand. Suddenly, the robot opens fire, shooting multiple energy projectiles. Asuma understands that the magic is placed directly into the bullet, not enchanted by someone. It's an artificial magic circle that doesn't need to pass through a mage's circuit. The bullets held magic for explosion, acceleration, and even mental contamination upon impact. They are showing no mercy, which is exactly how he wanted it. Even surrounded by dust, Asuma says this is all very interesting to see. The magic bullet itself is theoretically a very inefficient way to use magic, but when fired from a gun, it becomes a powerful anti-mage weapon. He thinks it's an ugly fusion of magic and science, and that Isaiah would hate seeing it. The robot's machine gun spins again, preparing another barrage against him. While dodging, he complains that the spray pattern is petty and too ugly. One of the bullets comes straight at him on a direct collision course. Focused, he prepares a counterattack and activates his particle veil spell. With his hand, he creates several particle shields to protect himself from the attack, but he is shocked to see that his magic simply fails to activate. Then, the bullet hits him square in the shoulder. He clutches his wounded shoulder with a pained expression, unable to believe what happened. His gaze turns serious as he tries to quickly understand the situation. The creature atop the robot starts emitting a strange type of wave through the air. These waves spread quickly, covering the entire battle area. The whole room is overtaken by this energy, pulsing in a very sinister way. He looks around and realizes what is happening, thinking it impossible. That robot was creating a space where using magic is simply forbidden. He understands that this is why the assassin was an artificial life form. After all, Attacks that don't rely on magic work perfectly in this space. Asuma admits the director is a great strategist, acknowledging his cunning. But to forbid the space, he had to have predicted that Asuma would use annihilation magic. Asuma then wonders if the director somehow knows about his past life. With no time to think, the robot attacks again with a rain of magic bullets. Asuma defends himself with his arms, withstanding the impact with difficulty. He decides to use the most effective magic that isn't restricted in this space. Using ancient magic, he reinforces his uniform, but knows it is only temporary. He watches the bullets ricocheting, aware that his defense will break soon. A long battle is dangerous, as he isn't in his best physical condition. The enemy machine keeps firing non-stop, trying to overwhelm his defense. Asuma wonders if the enemy attacked now, because they knew about his physical condition. But with a smile, he says it is still too early for the enemy to face him. Now that he understands the strategy, he will end the fight as quickly as possible. He then calls for Val, who replies she hears him perfectly. The girl warns that what he requested was completed at that exact moment. Val confirms that the master's coordinates were successfully located. A transfer item is sent, and he thanks her for the job well done. Just then, a blue light cube appears, his own artificial magical life form. Holding the cube, he announces he will now generate a familiar to turn the tables.